All right, everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're tackling Specialist Disability Accommodation,
SDA.
right, SDA. And we're going to figure out the best places to invest in Australia,
Yeah.
specifically Victoria Northwest and Melbourne Northeast. Now, this isn't just about financial returns.
Yeah.
It's also about, making a positive social impact.
Absolutely.
So, where do we even start with this? I mean,
Well, we've got a secret weapon.
a secret weapon.
It's called the demand to supply ratio. We call it the DSR.
Okay, DSR. So what is this magic ratio all about?
Basically, it tells us how many people are looking for SDA housing compared to how many SDA places are actually available.
Hmm, interesting.
Yeah, so let's say there are 200 people needing SDA housing, right?
Okay.
But there are only 100 SDA dwellings available. That gives us a DSR of 2.
So a DSR of 2 means like twice as many people need housing as there are places to live.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. So higher DSR, more demand, good for investors.
Right. Well, yeah, generally a higher DSR does signal a stronger demand.
Okay.
And we're using data straight from the NDIA and SDA data, their regional location reports, from September 2024, actually.
Ooh, fresh data. So does that mean if I see a region with a high DSR, I should just like jump in and invest?
Now, hold on. It's not quite that simple.
Oh,
DSR is a fantastic starting point, but there are other things to think about.
okay. Like what?
Well, different types of SDA are needed, right? Like what kind of properties are in demand, and even things like government policies can play a role.
Okay. Yeah, I see how that could get complicated. So like, give me an example.
Huh.
How could those things you mentioned affect an investment, even if the DSR looks good on paper?
All right, imagine you've got a region with a DSR of 2.5.
Okay, sounds promising.
Right. But what if most of the demand is for, say, high physical support housing,
Hmm.
but all they've got is tons of improved livability places?
So even if the overall demand is high, it might not be the right kind of housing.
Exactly. You've got to match the supply to the actual needs.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got our SDA data reports from September 2024, and they've got all these DSRs broken down for different areas in Victoria Northwest and Melbourne Northeast.
Right.
Let's start with Victoria Northwest. What are we seeing there in the data?
All right, so in Victoria Northwest, we've got Mildura with a DSR of 0.91,
Hmm.
and the Grampians region is sitting at 0.89.
Wait, those are both less than 1?
Right.
What does that even mean?
It means they actually have more supply than demand right now.
More supply. So not exactly a prime investment spot based on the DSR alone.
Well, yeah, other factors might make those areas attractive,
Okay.
but purely on DSR, not the hottest picks.
Interesting. So even with SDA, there are places where demand isn't that high.
It happens, and that's why this research is so important.
Okay, makes sense. Let's move over to Melbourne Northeast then. What's going on over there?
All right, so we've got a mixed bag here in Melbourne Northeast.
Okay.
Nillumbik King Lake has the highest DSR. It's sitting at 1.03,
Oh, okay.
but then you've got Whittlesea Wallen at 0.91.
Banyule at 0.90 and Darebin North at 0.86.
So one region's technically undersupplied, and the others have more supply than demand. But I bet it's not as simple as just picking Nillumbik King Lake and calling it a day, right?
You got it. There's more to this story.
I figured. So what's the next layer we need to peel back?
Well, remember all those different design categories we talked about?
Oh, right, like high physical support and all that.
Exactly. We need to see how the demand breaks down within each category.
Yeah, that makes sense. A high overall DSR doesn't mean every type of SDA is in high demand.
Right. We need to dig deeper.
All right, let's do it. I'm ready to break down these design categories and see what's really going on. Okay, design categories. Why are these so important for investors to really wrap their heads around?
Well, you got to remember that SDA is all about meeting the needs of people with disabilities, right?
Right.
And those needs can vary a lot.
Yeah, of course.
So each design category is like tailored to specific support needs.
Huh.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got high physical support, robust, and improved livability. Let's break those down a bit. What exactly are we talking about when we say high physical support?
So high physical support is for people with significant physical disabilities, folks who need a lot of help with daily living.
I see.
These places often have things like ceiling hoists.
Oh, yeah, for transfers and stuff?
Exactly. And, automated doors, bathrooms that are super adaptable. It's all about making things as accessible as possible.
So really specialized features for complex physical needs.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. What about robust housing then? What makes those different?
Robust housing, that's more for people who might have, challenging behaviors.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe they just need a tougher living environment. Think like reinforced walls, maybe weighted doors, sometimes even sensory rooms.
So it's about safety and durability in those cases.
Yeah, you got it.
And then there's improved livability, right?
Mm,
That one seems pretty broad.
yeah, improved livability is kind of the catch-all category.
Hmm.
It's for people with less complex needs.
Okay.
But they still might benefit from things that make life easier, like wider doorways and hallways, or step-free access, maybe an adaptable kitchen.
So even if they don't need all those super specialized features, these design elements can still make a difference.
Exactly. It's all about creating a home that's both functional and comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really starting to see how understanding these design categories
Mm.
is essential for investors. It's not just about looking at the overall DSR, right?
Nope, not at all. Let's say you're looking at a region with a DSR of 2.
Okay, sounds good so far.
Right, but then you find out that like 80% of the demand is for high physical support housing,
Uh-huh.
but most of what's available is improved livability.
Oh, that's a problem.
Yeah, big mismatch.
Even though the overall demand is there,
Yeah.
the supply doesn't line up with what people actually need.
Right, and that's where an investor could get tripped up.
Totally. So we need to look at the demand by design category,
Yeah.
not just the big overall DSR number. But wait, there's more, right? What about property types?
Ah, yes, property types. That's another crucial piece of the puzzle.
Why is that? I mean, a house is a house, right?
Well, not really. Some people love living in apartments, right? All the action, the community vibe.
Yeah, I get that.
But others, they want a detached house. They want their own space, their own yard.
Okay, I see.
And then you got to think about outdoor space, accessibility features. Is it close to shops and stuff? All those things matter.
So we've got design category, property type, and then all those location factors.
It's a lot, right?
Yeah, a lot to keep track of. How do we even go about gathering all this information? It seems like a lot of work.
Well, that's where those SDA data reports come in handy.
The ones we mentioned earlier.
Yep. Those reports break everything down for you. Demand by design category, property type, all the details.
Like a treasure map for SDA investors.
Uh-huh. That's one way to put it.
Okay, so we've got our data, our reports. But even with all that, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Where do we even begin with all this?
Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. Start with the basics. Look at your target regions, understand their overall DSRs, but then, like we said, dive deeper.
Deeper into the reports.
Yeah, break down the demand by design category and property type.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what are the specific needs in this region? What kind of housing is most in demand?
Got it.
And what kind of properties are already available? Is there a gap?
Ooh, okay. I'm seeing the bigger picture now.
See? It's all about connecting the dots.
So high DSR is good, but we need to make sure the demand matches the types of properties that are actually needed in that area.
Exactly. Find those sweet spots.
This is fantastic. I'm learning so much, but I have a feeling there's even more to this whole SDA investment thing, right?
You're right. There's a whole other layer we haven't even touched on yet.
Oh, what's that?
Well, things like government policies, funding models, even more specific location stuff, all that can make a big difference.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm ready to dive into those big picture elements and see how they all fit together.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked DSR, design categories, property types, all that good stuff. But you mentioned there's even more to consider when it comes to SDA investment. Like, what are some of those bigger, broader things that investors really need to keep in mind?
Well, one of the biggest things is government policy and funding. You can't talk SDA without talking NDIS.
Right, the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Exactly. The NDIS is like the main funding source for SDA housing in Australia.
So basically, any changes to the NDIS, like their funding or their policies, that could have a big impact on demand.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, imagine the NDIS decides to change how they fund a certain support category.
Okay.
Or maybe they make the eligibility rules stricter.
Hmm.
That could change how many people qualify for SDA funding.
Yeah.
And that would totally affect demand in certain areas or for certain types of housing.
So it's not enough to just look at the numbers.
Yeah.
We need to understand the whole policy landscape, too.
Absolutely. Got to see the bigger picture.
Makes sense. What about location, though? Does that come into play as well? I mean, location's always a big deal in real estate, right?
Location is huge GE, always. And SDA is no exception. Think about it. Access to amenities, transportation, healthcare, support services, shops, all that.
Yeah.
That all affects how desirable the property is. And that affects its value too, obviously.
So even if a property looks good on paper, good DSR, right, design category, all that,
Yeah.
if it's in the middle of nowhere with no access to anything, it's probably not a great investment.
You got it. Think long term, right?
Yeah.
Can people actually live there comfortably?
Right, right. It's almost like putting together a puzzle, isn't it?
It is kind of.
All these different pieces, DSR, designs, property types, policies, location. And we got to figure out how they all fit together to make a successful investment.
Exactly. It's not just about numbers, it's about people.
Yeah, understanding what they need, where they need it.
That's the key. That's what separates the good investors from the great ones.
This has been so insightful. I feel like we could keep going for hours, but we're running out of time. So for our listeners out there, what are your top takeaways? What should they remember as they start exploring SDA investment?
Okay, number one, research, research, research. Understand those DSRs, but don't stop there. Dive into those SDA data reports, see the breakdown of demand.
Yeah, by category, by property type.
Right, and think about who's going to be living there, what they need, and don't forget the big picture stuff like policies and location.
Knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The more you know, the better decisions you'll make. And, SDA investment isn't just about making money.
Right.
It's about making a difference, providing people with amazing homes.
Absolutely. Okay, any final thoughts? Something to leave our listeners with? A question to ponder as they dive into this world?
Let me see. Think about this. SDA demand is driven by individual needs, right? So how can you go beyond the data and connect with those needs?
Like, really understand what people are looking for.
Exactly. Talk to advocacy groups, support services, maybe even potential residents. Get their perspective.
Wow, that's great advice. Go beyond the numbers, connect with the people.
Yeah. And of course, check out those full SDA data reports.
They're a gold mine of information.
They really are. The more you know, the better you'll be able to find those SDA opportunities.
The ones that align with your goals, both financial and, social impact goals.
Absolutely. It's about making a difference while making smart investments.
Well said. This has been an amazing deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and happy investing.